Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. And in this week's episode of Chair Hospital, we're going to the geriatric ward. Now, what I can say definitively about this chair is that it's old. It's certainly more than 100 years old, could be 150 years old, and I don't see any reason it couldn't be 200 years old. Now, the problem with trying to assign a date to furniture using the design features and motifs is anybody can make any kind of furniture at any time. And what we have here is a turned leg, fluted, tapered. It's got a square corner with a floral medallion in it. And according to the internet, this particular style appeared around 1775, 1776, and later. I don't think that's going to be happening in America because we were fairly busy at that time. But in Europe, France, maybe even in Britain, you might have seen chairs being made like this. The seat cushion would be supported by this webbing, which would be stretched across from side to side. The back would have something similar to it. And you can see that through the ages, it's been upholstered enough times to where it looks like this thing has been attacked by insects, which is kind of confusing because it has been attacked by insects. In addition to the hundreds of holes left by old upholstery tacks, we also have our old friend powder post beetles, which have gotten into just about every single part of this chair. And when you've got 200 years to play with, I guess that gives them plenty of time to do their work. When I see an old repair on a piece that comes in, I usually flinch. But in this case, you can see this nice clean wood here. This is a repair part. This is a repair part. And what they've done is they've taken this original curved chair frame here and slowly cut it out, made it nice and clean, and put this wedge-shaped piece of wood with a tenon that goes inside this leg here. And I have to say credit due because that's an incredibly good repair. Now on the other side of the chair, apparently the nail holes got so thick that they couldn't hold anymore, so they chiseled out the wood, glued in a couple pieces of plywood, and that gave them a good surface to staple the new webbing into. Now this brings us to the business at hand, which is this piece which is broken off and allowed other joints on the back to break away. And again, we can blame the powder post beetles. And so what I've got to do is get this back into one piece. And it's got to be a little stronger than it was before it broke because it's a lot weaker than it was when it was brand new. One of the first things I noticed when I was examining this chair was this little ring right here. Now, my first thought was, that's a nail head. Not too unusual to see a mortise and tenon in furniture from the 1880s up into the 1900s to have the mortise held in place with just a simple nail. But I went and ran my magnet across it. It didn't stick. This is a wooden peg holding this mortise and tenon joint together. Now, one unfortunate thing about this chair is since the other side of that hole is underneath the upholstery, it's exposed, and if everything goes well, I can drive it out. Switch to a smaller punch, and I think it's going to work. Now I can curse the old repair. Sometime in the past, someone has injected glue into this loose mortise, and that's what tore this apart, even though I had the pin removed when I pulled it out. That's no big deal. we'll just deal with that along with the rest of this thing. Now this brake is a little unusual because it's a clean brake. It can go back together without too big of a gap, but the reason it can do that is because it's got no interlocking parts. That's the little pieces that get torn away when the wood separates. And since this just simply went that way, it's all still pretty much the same shape. Unfortunately, with all these curved lines and it's fairly slippery, it can be very difficult to get this clamped back together to glue it. So first thing to do is to get it held down, or at least one piece of it, where it can't move. Now what I need to do is to create flat surfaces that the clamp can get a hold of, and that will hold this piece in position while the glue sets. Now this piece will hold it in position, but I still need to get some pressure between the two surfaces for the glue to set up properly. So I've put a short piece of a 1/4-inch bolt in the end of this block and made another little oak block to go on here. And with a wing nut, I will apply pressure, and that'll get me a good glue joint. And after that sets up, we can go on with the rest of the job. Workbench is not a table, it's not a desk, it's a clamp. And it should be the biggest clamp in the shop. And it should be able to hold anything that you've got to work on. And sometimes that calls for a little ingenuity. That's nice and solid. This is the stub of the old tenon, and it's been repaired with modern glue. So I'm going to have to try and get this out, or at least get enough of it out that I can rebuild another one and put this back together. And that's the end result. Well, that's as much as I can do today. I want this piece to cure at least 24 hours because I've got to cut another mortise in it and make a tenon that goes between the two of them. Chopping a broken tenon out of a mortise is not that complicated. Certainly not compared to trying to attach a new tenon to where the old tenon broke off. And now we're back to the problem of working with curved wood. What I have to do is to cut another mortise in the end of this piece, and I can't chop it out with a chisel like I did the other one. Fortunately, the tenon comes all the way down to the bottom edge, so I can cut a slot with the router here. And this piece will go in here. I'm going to use this face here as 90 degrees and make this square with it, because even though it looks like there may be a slight angle to it, I really can't tell because of how battered up and chewed up this tenon is. It might be straight, it might be canted a little, but I'll make up for that when I make the piece that goes in between the two parts. And to make up for the curved board, I've attached flat pieces to it so I can hold this against the fence as it goes across the router bit. Sometimes you just have to look at the situation and say, it could have been worse. Now with a good bit of fitting and trimming, come up with this piece. And this project is on the downhill side. And this is the finished piece, filled and sanded, ready to be installed. And now we can start putting this chair back together. The most important part of any glue job is the dry fit. For internal parts, cracks, splits, and these repair pieces, I always use PVA glue, which is pretty much permanent. This is Type Bond 3. It's great glue, just what I happen to have on the shelf. For the joints themselves, I'm going to be using hide glue, which is the traditional furniture maker's glue. That way, if anybody wants to try and do a more extensive restoration of this chair sometime in the future, a little steam and these joints will come loose and they won't end up having to destroy half of it like I did on this one because somebody squirted construction adhesive into here. Very, very bad idea. In any case, because this piece down at the bottom is split and cracked, I can fit this together in parts and see how it's going to look and figure out how I'm going to clamp and get all that figured out before I actually apply the glue, which is not very glamorous and doesn't make good video. Now clamping chairs is always a problem because there's so many curved edges, so I like to use ropes, and that allows me to get a good directional pull, keep these two joints nice and snug until the glue sets up, and all I've got to do is take these clamps off and it's just about ready to go. There's no way to say this chair really is 200 years old. All we have to go by is these details and the way it's constructed. The tools used to make it still exist in their modern versions today. So if somebody really wanted to, they could construct a duplicate of this piece, and with a little bit of creative aging, it would be very difficult to tell a new one from an old one. This is Bronze Age for the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. I thank you for sitting through this video about a 200-year-old chair. I really appreciate if you would like and subscribe. Any comments, always respond to them. Any questions, always answer them. And again, thank you for watching.